Take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
So Cenk Uygur recently, in an exclusive, I believe, video call with his subscribers or supporters at TYT. This is Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, a left-wing progressive news channel, at least historically left-wing. And so in this news call where he was talking to supporters and I guess subscribers, people who paying members or whatever, he was talking about the next steps of TYT. It almost sounded like the way he was talking, like there might be some friction in terms of his members. Maybe more and more members are starting to wonder what the fuck is it that they are putting their money up for, and what is it that Cenk thinks he's doing with this network. I imagine there's many people who still subscribe to the Young Turks, still want to believe that they have the best intentions possible, and yet are starting to become more and more frustrated because they see the same things that we see. They see that Cenk and Anna are going on right-wing programs, maybe in one breath to push this sort of idea of left-wing populism that they are trying to focus on now, but in the next breath to denigrate other members of the left, and specifically trans people, really going after trans people repetitively, and siding with the right wing, with the reactionary right wing when it comes to trans people, throwing them under the bus and essentially identifying them, trans people, and the cause of trans people and LGBTQ in general, essentially identifying them as a cause worth sacrificing in the name of building coalitions towards left-wing populism. Now, the flaw in that is that those type of compromises never work. If you're compromising marginalized groups in the name of building some kind of populist economic system, guess what? You have an economic system that excludes certain marginalized groups, and that is just a repeat of the problem that we already have in society, and the flaws of America as it was designed from the beginning and throughout its development, increasingly trying to bring more and more people to the table, but also increasingly creating restrictions for certain groups. And we're in a time right now where it's not just like, oh, you know, Biden's in office and so there are trans people in the cabinet, but like there are serious restrictions being put on the lives of trans people. You know, so even this illusion that trans people and the LGBTQ mafia is running the show, or whatever right-wingers believe, I mean, that illusion is shattered. So for Cenk and Anna as left-wing commentators to be continuing to play into this illusion that trans people have any real power over our discourse other than just the power to stand up for themselves and defend themselves, you know, it's only in service of increasingly restricting the lives of trans people in America. Continuing to target trans people as a point of agreement between yourself and the right is now just, you're literally just empowering them further to bring the boot down more on the neck of trans people in America. So it's just the opposite of progressive. It's the opposite of left wing. And principles like that are supposed to be what grounds you as a leftist, because you're supposed to be able to understand how inclusion or creating a truly equitable society is necessary in terms of having a society that actually works for anyone. None of us are free until we're all free. And so, I mean, if you don't have that as a fundamental belief, then yeah, you get pulled away from the people whose cause kind of matters the most, the cause that acts as a canary in the coal mine for the rights of the rest of us. You know, they're going to go after the rights of women based on these same attacks, these same ways that they go after the rights of trans people. They're going to go after children in schools in any way that they can based on this same criteria of going after trans kids. So Cenk knows this. I believe that he knows all of this, but he seems to believe now that compromise is the right way forward. And so he talks in this, and I only spent so much time talking about TYT's position on trans people recently, because I think that that's going to be very important context in terms of what this announcement is that Cenk made to his supporters. And this was an announcement that he seemed to make kind of in confidence, like this isn't the big major announcement yet that he's making, but the Vanguard got their hands on this somehow. Somebody sent it to them, and so they publicized it, kind of stepped on his announcement there. So we don't know exactly what it is that Cenk's planning, but I mean, he pretty much says what it is, and then we can speculate a little bit about to what extent he wants to do this. But I'll play a little bit here.
What I says now is finally getting to the point that, and this, I think, what some of you are sensing in me, and what is causing some of the, ruckus, is I think that the right way to go now is peacemaking rather than warrior. And so, now let me tell you why. As the guy who started the war in a lot of ways initially, right? Yes, but okay, we've been talking on Operation Hope, especially for the diehards here that have been here for over a year. Or like, okay, yes, but what do we do next? What do we do? How do we put this into action, right? Well, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do Justice Democrats again because it was so hard and we pulled off miracles and then it got misdirected, right? But we're going to do something along those lines, okay? And we're going to gather up folks and we're going to lead a charge. And so, and here's how that's going to work. We're going to plant our flag and we're going to say, this is what we stand for. And if you like it, come over here, pass these 6 bills. So no, we're not allowing any politician or any candidate into this group, whatever the group is, that isn't about getting these bills passed. It isn't about your ego. It isn't about anything else. It's about, if you haven't gotten this done, you haven't gotten anything done. Okay? So we're gonna take it to the voters. We're gonna take it to them in Republican districts, in Democratic districts, and districts in the middle. And we're gonna say, do you want fighters now that fight for you, all of you? The whole country agrees to these 6 things. And for the folks who are further left than me and want to pass other bills, or in the same exact place as me, but gun control and climate change aren't on the list, what are we going to do, right?
So here in this clip, Cenk says that he wants to start another political project similar to Justice Democrats, which him and Kyle Kulinski did start. It was a fundraising project and an organizing project aimed at getting more elected Democrats, more progressive elected Democrats into Congress on the federal level. And it did work. The members of the squad were there because of Justice Democrats, which was partially thanks to Cenk and Kyle. And then some drama happened where Cenk was forced out of Justice Democrats, and then Kyle left as well. And so I believe, I'm not sure if that organization is still going, but I know that they were still active for quite a while. And so Cenk seems to think that it's time to move on to something else. Obviously, while Justice Democrats succeeded in getting some people elected into Congress, that did not prove to be as influential of a bloc as people hoped it could be. And so, the progress that was made there has been pretty much pared back. Doesn't mean that individual members of the squad, like AOC or Rashida Tlaib, aren't still going to do important things in the future. Or maybe different coalitions will arise that allow them to be empowered more. But for the most part, the project of electing progressives into the Democratic Party has been a failure. So it seems like the difference between that and what Cenk wants to do now is he wants this to be a more centrist party. And to me, it kind of sounds like he wants to create a political party. Not sure if that's exactly what it's going to be. It might be more like an organizing project aimed at electing certain candidates, like Justice Democrats was. I suppose that's a little bit more likely, except for the fact that Cenk is kind of grandiose with these ideas of his. I mean, he did like a Hail Mary run for president during the election, supposedly because he thought Biden should be forced out, and I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll be the one to do it. You know, some people said that he just did it to sell his book at the time. It was probably a combination of both, some convenient timing there. But we know that Cenk has the propensity for kind of grandiose ideas that you almost want to respect in their boldness, but so far he hasn't cracked it. And it just seems like he is not a very good figure to be leading these movements, whether it's the Justice Democrats or his own campaigns. The last one was kind of a joke, but there was some other campaign that he ran, maybe for some seat in California or something. He's run for office before, and that was the hardest that he's ever gotten shellacked in terms of information coming out or his words being twisted against him and his reputation smeared by people saying he wanted to legalize bestiality or something like that, which was not true, but that was, you know, what happened when he really threw his hat into the ring of elected politics is they came after him hard. And, you know, in the case of Justice Democrats, he was forced out because of some off-color comments that he'd made in the past or whatever. And so he's just not very good. He's not very bulletproof when it comes to being the leader of a movement like this. And so I can understand his temptation to want to get in front of these things before we really talk about the ideology of it. I get what he's doing when he wants to take these like bold Hail Marys and get himself involved. And again, in the case of Justice Democrats, they made a dent there. So that's exactly why you take bold swings when you feel like you see it, is because whether you're Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren or Cenk Uygur, you never know how far that swing is going to take you. You know, RFK Jr., when you throw your hat into the ring, if you play your cards right, you can push whatever it is that's in your agenda forward. And if things align right, you can push it further than you ever thought possible. So it seems like that's what Cenk is trying to do, is he's trying to formulate this theory that he has recently of what the left supposedly should be doing, or what the left should consider themselves to be, which in his mind is populist. Move more towards a vague populist type of model of politics. And because he sees a lack of that type of politics, he wants to step in the ring. Now, the problem with this, again, before we get to my disagreements with the politics of it, the problem is that I don't think this is as necessary as he seems to think it is, or that we lack this to the extent that Cenk Uygur thinks we do. I do not think the problem in terms of political parties in America is that there's not a centrist option. Because first of all, the Democrats are the centrist option. And if you buy into the narrative that the Democrats are so radical that you need something in between them and the Republicans in order to be in the center, then I think that you're just being duped. You're just kind of allowing yourself politically to be dragged to the right, because the Democrats have been consistently dragged to the right really since Reagan. And these things are complicated and they go back and forth. But, you know, in this recent response to Donald Trump's address to Congress, the Democratic answer to his response was like praising Reagan and saying, "Oh, I'm glad we didn't have Trump in power and during the Cold War. I'm glad it was Reagan instead." And so that's the Democratic Party that we are dealing with. That's as centrist as you can get. And that's the mainstream, that was the response to Donald Trump's speech as far as the mainstream Democrats are concerned. Bernie also did his own response, but that was of his own volition. So Democrats are the centrist party, and I agree with the need for a third party, but it depends on what the priorities of that party are. And I think Cenk has some policies listed out, but he hasn't really made this announcement yet, so I don't think we actually know what the list of policies are that Cenk wants to institute. But I think we can kind of assess. He's talked a lot about bringing the minimum wage up. He has talked about money in politics. I imagine getting money out of politics is going to be at the top of the list of the policies that define whatever this is. Either it's a political movement or it's a party. But the way Cenk describes it is less like we're going to find candidates who fit our mold and we're going to try to get them elected. And it seems more like he says we're going to plant our flag, and if you want to come over here, you can. And that's how we're going to go forward. So to me, that sounds like he's starting a party. That sounds like he wants to create a political entity because his bet is that there's enough people who want something different from the Democrats that they could build a meaningful coalition. It arises questions for me, and again, we don't know all the details of this yet, but I imagine we'll be hearing plenty about it. Who knows? This could be spectacularly disastrous, or it could just be kind of a blip. I mean, my problem with this is that unless you're taking a specifically pro-labor or left-wing position, I don't see how this is any different from what Andrew Yang did, or even supposedly the People's Party, which I guess even the People's Party, which was like backed by Jimmy Dore and a lot of people who are considered to be grifters on the nominally left side. So even that was more left-wing in its posturing. But the thesis behind both of those parties and more is that there's no party that answers to the people who vaguely agree with Democrats and vaguely agree with Republicans on some issues. And the political bet there is that there needs to be something that comes across as unaffiliated with those two parties, because there's so much baggage that comes with affiliation with the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. That's undeniable. And so we need a party that's unattached from that baggage, that can appeal to common sense and appeals to the most popular issues that people who have cultural disagreements on social issues can get behind. Things like a higher wage or money out of politics, etc. Things that seem to be common sense and things that in Cenk's calculation supposedly are more popular in the Trump era, like actual populist policies, again, like getting money out of politics. The main problem that I see with that, aside from the fact that I don't think the centrist approach is the answer, but I get what he's trying to do. And if I move away from the rhetoric of like, is this centrist, is it left, is it right, and look at it more as a party trying to attract people who don't consider themselves left or right, I think that there's some value to that political strategy. But my issue with this is that if, let's say, the main goal is to get money out of politics, right? And you're trying to build a coalition of people who want to get money out of politics, but you're not specifying too much other things that would indicate whether a person is on the left or right of the spectrum, right? So issues like trans people or immigration or whatever, we're not going to ask what your beliefs are when it comes to those social issues, because that would require us to do something like defend trans people, which in Cenk's opinion is a waste of time, right? They don't want to get bogged down doing that. So instead they want to focus on agreements on things like getting money out of politics. So the problem is, for me, if your coalition is not based on a coherent sense of where you stand socially, as well as whether you are sort of into this vague idea of populism, that's going to affect whether or not somebody is able to effectively organize around the idea of getting money out of politics. In other words, the other issues, let's say somebody who supports harsh immigration, who has interest in private prisons, right? So any of these so-called populist Republicans like Josh Hawley are going to have relationships with the private prison companies because those are the entities that support the more radical immigration policy of somebody like Josh Hawley. So that money in politics is going to get in the way of the coalition that you're trying to build with people based on this vague idea of populism. In other words, the Justice Democrats' approach was more effective because you were gathering politicians not just based on the idea of money out of politics, but based on the idea of a general progressive and left-wing ethic, because that agreement on the maximum amount of issues was going to lead to the most ability to move in lockstep. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of examples of that working effectively with the squad in the House. And so I just see this loose organization that they're trying to build as a coalition. I see it falling apart because I think, and I've said this before, that the supposedly populist ambitions of the coalition that Cenk is trying to build, this idea that we can move beyond left and right to a populist vision that serves the mass amounts of people, what's going to get away of that is all of the social and cultural issues that the right wing is constantly putting in people's faces to distract them from economic issues, to distract them from the way that right-wing policy affects them in their life. And so you're not going to be able to beat that propaganda machine by playing nice with it. And so what Cenk is trying to do now is play nice with the right wing because he sees some moments where he agrees with them on rhetoric. But as I've said before, if you try to build a coalition around that, it's going to fall apart. I do not think that what America needs right now is a middle of the road party. Andrew Yang did that. The People's Party did that. These coalitions fell apart because ultimately they tried to do the same thing. They tried to create a new Bill of Rights of these are the most important things that you agree with and believe in. And this is going to be the new standard that we move forward with. And we're going to do away with the kind of, with the understood coalition of progressive beliefs, and we're going to move towards something more populism based or whatever. I mean, in any case that you're trying to start a new party, you're going to have to do that. That's step one. What is the list of policies that you agree with in order to be a part of this organization or party or whatever it is? And so I respect Cenk for wanting to focus on economic issues, but I'm just going to go on the record right now and say that sacrificing the cultural and social issues and the marginalized people that come with that is going to hurt your ability to organize effectively around the idea of populism. I mean, this is obvious. I really think this is obvious. And I get that it can be a tightrope to walk when you're trying to organize around progressive ideas and you're pulled in many different directions by different types of progressives. I understand that. But at the same time, alienating members of that coalition to try to play to a coalition that you imagine could exist in the middle, I think is a bad strategy, and it's just going to lead to this overall theory of politics to fall apart, which I guess is a good thing because we'll get to stop hearing Cenk yap about it. But this is what he's going to be focused on for the next few years. So it's going to be a lot of him trying to organize with right-wingers, probably going to be involved getting in the way of left-wing candidates from time to time, and essentially doing what Elon Musk said he would do, and put money into electing moderate Democrats to try to remove any even semblance of resistance or progressivism from the Democratic Party, what little exists in it today. So Whether or not Cenk is specifically setting his goals on that, which it seems like he might be with how viciously he goes after supporters of trans people, even people he's affiliated with, like Francesca Fiorentini. So it seems like he might have a certain amount of disdain towards those people and want to push them out of politics like Elon does. But even if that's not his intention, it will almost certainly be the effect of what he's doing, because he is, to take him in good faith, underestimating how hateful these people are. But, you know, I think at this point that's clear to him, and he just thinks that it's better to organize with these hateful people rather than trying to find people who are not hateful, who want to get organized and active in politics, but don't have any place to go, don't have any political home, not because they're in the middle, but because the Democratic Party is failing to do what it supposedly stands for. And there's no party that supports labor. There's no party that actually stands up for progressive causes and economic populism. And so I think that's the winning strategy going forward. And, you know, abandoning progressive politics in the name of vague populism will end up being a failed strategy. And you can quote me on that. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm going to be posting all kinds of exclusive content there, like book reviews, movie reviews, songs, beats, if you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, and more. If there's ideas that you have for exclusive content that you'd like to see, let me know and we'll figure some things out.